A sensory evaluation, sensory analysis is an essential tool in product development to measure product differences, perceived characteristics of products, and the acceptability of the products. Sensory analysis is a scientific discipline used to evoke, measure, analyze, and interpret reactions to material characteristics and food traits as they are perceived by sight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. And then product development relies on the work of sensory scientists to find out consumer preferences and how changes made to the food affects perception and liking. The sensory traits include everything from appearance to texture. Appearance attributes include the color, size, shape, and opaqueness or clarity of the products. And then the aroma of the product is important with some types of products. Are there any of others? Texture is an important piece of the eating experience and sensory testing. Is the product crunchier or than the consumer expected? Does it stick to the consumer's teeth? Panelists measure flavor as well. Does the flavor match the concept? Is it what the consumers expected? And all that. Yeah, in sensory evaluation, of course, we're just going to look at those different attributes or characteristics of the product, such as the color, the size, the shape of the products. You're going to look at the mouthfeel, how they feel, the taste, or the textures, and all that. And then sensory evaluation and food product development, sensory analysis methods for evaluating taste, texture, and appearance. The sensory appeal of a food must meet consumer expectations in order for the product to be a success. The results of sensory analysis tests determine whether a product moves forward in development or if the project is scrapped. Sensory analysis techniques provide tools for product developers to determine the accessibility of a product, preferences of consumers, and implications of products, of ingredients or processing changes. Yeah, as we said earlier on, just these evaluations or this sensory analysis basically looks at the attributes of a product or the characteristics of the product. You look at the tests, how the products taste, the textures, and the appearance, and how you do this. You have to, of course, consider your target the target beneficiaries to carry out these tests. We're going to look at the different ways we're going to carry out this sensory evaluation test. And then there are two types of sensory tests that are used in the selection of ingredients. One is the difference testing and the triangle test. Difference testing is used to determine if the flavor makes a significant change in the flavor information in the flavor formulation. And then triangle test, for example, can be used to predict whether a larger population will be able to detect formulation or processing changes. The types of sensory tests used is highly dependent on the goals of the studies. Companies should define the goals and consider what sensory tests may be applicable prior to starting trials. Yeah. Before you choose a type of sensory test, you need to first determine the goals, like what are you going to look at in this product? What exactly are you going to look at in the product? So, choosing a sensory test based on objectives, there are different objectives that you can set of your product before you choose the best way to sensorily test it. Objective number one is, does a sensory difference exist between the samples? So you will need to use the discriminative test in case you're trying to find the differences between samples. And then does attribute or character X differ between samples? If you're going to look at a specific trait, let's say maybe at the texture or the color, does it differ between two different samples? Then you will need to use the attribute difference tests. And then if you're looking at which sample is preferred or how acceptable is sample X, if you're trying to look at how the liking, how preferable, how much people like the products, and then you will need to use the affective test. And then if you're trying to look at the ratings for each of the characteristics in one or more of the products, and then you will need to use the descriptive analysis test. And then types of sensory tests. One, we said we have the analytical tests. In analytical tests, the analytical test measures the attributes of the products through quantitative and qualitative measures using highly trained personnel. We know quantitative is where you use the numbers and all that to, let's say, give value or differences to a product. And then in qualitative, of course, is where you use the word. It's like descriptive words to talk about maybe your likeness or the differences in a product. And testing procedures and the participants are highly dependent on the test objectives. Analytical tests involve distinguishing between products and, in some cases, their attributes. Here, train panels are a part of some companies, while others train contract panels for specific projects in order to keep a panel well trained. Regular meetings are necessary. Trained panelists should never determine the acceptability of products due to a significant amount of bias. Yeah, in these analytical tests, we're going to use panelists or trained panels um, to measure the attributes or to measure the traits of the products. And then in the second type is the discrimination tests. In order to have meaningful difference tests, an essential quality is that samples are identical except for the one attribute under consideration. If not, ratings will be based on information other than that about you are trying to learn. For examples of discrimination tests for distinguishing differences in products are the triangle. We're going to look at the 2 out of 5. You're going to look at the dual trial method and the differences from control among other differences and similarity tests. Attributes, differences, and similarity tests include pair comparisons. We're going to look at the pairwise ranking, the multiple paired comparison, the simple ranking, and the rating of several samples. These are all examples of discrimination tests. And then panelists that have been screened for sensory acuity are suited to participate in discrimination tests. The goal of discrimination test is to establish if there are products or attribute differences. Yeah, in this discrimination, of course, are you trying to just get the differences between the products or the difference in characteristics of the products. And then the examples of this discrimination test that we use are one, we have the triangle test. This test is a simple test to distinguish differences in products. Companies may wish to test products made in different processing facilities or a cost-reduced product versus original formulation to see if any differences are realized. In this test, 3 samples are presented simultaneously or successively. 2 of the samples are the same, representing a single lot, and the third represents another lot and might be different. Then the subject is required to pick the sample that he believes is different. The order in which the samples are presented must be balanced or randomized to prevent any bias. In order to obtain reliable results, at least 12 responses should be obtained. Yeah. In this triangle test, you put 3 supply, you put 3 different products, and these 2 of the products are the same and one is different. So you need to have around 12 respondents to try to figure out the different products. And then next is the dual trial test. The sample set is like that for the triangle test. Yeah, it's like that of the triangle test. However, now one of the identical sample is identified as the control, and the panelist must choose the unidentified sample that is different from the control. Yeah, here you also still have the 3 samples like the first triangle one, but here, however, the 2 of the samples that are the same, they will choose one of it and put it as a control, and then they will randomize the other one and plus the real product, and then you will try to find out the differences. The control can remain constant in the test or can be altered between the 2 samples. The dual trial test, as a rule, should have no less than 16 participants. And then the 2 out of 5 tests, like the other discriminative tests, the 2 out of 5 tests is used to identify differences in samples. Panelists are given 5 samples and asked to identify the 2 that are different from the other 3. Yeah, they put 5 samples, and then out of the 5, there are 2 that are different and the 3 are the same. So you're asked to identify the 2 that are different out of these 5 samples. Because five samples are used, the panelists have less opportunity to guess the correct samples by chance. So the chance of picking the correct sample is 1 out of 10, much lower chances than the paired comparison or the triangle test. And then the paired comparison for attributes, still an example of the discrimination test, sorry. The paired comparison for attributes, this method employs a standard external to the test itself. Two samples are presented and the panelist chooses one of the sample on the basis of the specified characteristics or attributes. An example of a question that might be asked in a paired comparison test is which of the sample is sweeter? Yeah, here you put your samples and then there are some attributes or characteristics that you will need your panelists to look at. Like you have some questions and ask them which of the samples is sweeter and all that. And then all the panelists has to do is look at the one which is sweeter and all that and list it out. And then panelists will usually test several pairs of sample, stating which is more of an attribute. The next example is pairwise ranking tests for attributes. The ranking of several samples that are grouped into pairs to test differences of a single attribute, such as sweetness. Our samples are presented in randomized pairs using every possible combination on each panelist. The panelist indicates which of the paired sample is more of the attribute for each of the pairs until all possible combinations have been scored. If four different juice drink formulas are being evaluated for sweetness, let's say they're called A, B, C, and D, and there are 12 participants for the otherwise rank for the pairwise ranking test, there would be six different pair combinations. You're going to have AB and BA, BC and CD and DC. That will be served in a different order for each participant. And then each sample in the whole study should be given a separate 3-digit code to eliminate any bias. Yeah, here the products are prepared are put in a randomized paired forms here, and then you will have to check and pick out the differences in each of the single attributes. And then differences from control tests. At the next example, differences from control tests. This test combines some aspects of difference testing with some scaling. Subjects are asked to rate the size of differences between each sample and a control on a scale. Some test samples can be same as the control. So the scale ranges from no difference to extreme difference. And then the mean difference from control for each sample and for the blind control is calculated and the results are analyzed using analysis of variance. Using analysis of variance will determine which samples are statistically different. This test can also be used to determine the degree of difference between samples. Yeah, here you're given samples and then you will need to plot out the differences on a scale. Like if there's minimum difference, of course it could be at 1% on this. Let's say at 1 on the scale. If there's 5 difference from the control, like that. You just need to plot out the difference on a scale. And then the next example, the next type of the next type of sensory testing is descriptive tests. We had the analytic, we had the discrimination. Now the third is descriptive. There are only 3 types. Then in this descriptive test involves both the discrimination and description of the characteristics of products. Such tests typically require few panelists and more training. Panels can be as small as 6 people and as large as 20, but the typical number of participants is from 10 to 12. Generally, small sensory programs will not become involved with such tests except perhaps some scaling of selected key attributes. This descriptive test can be ranked against chemical and physical attributes from instrumental data. Common tests include the quantitative descriptive analysis, the flavor profiling. This is another example of the descriptive test. We have the QDA, we have the flavor profiling, we have texture profiling. And every company uses its employees to evaluate products at some point. So biases can occur because of vested interest in the product. But employee training, careful test design, and application of statistics can lessen the concerns. Likes and dislikes cause bias more than any other item. So training is very necessary. Physical reference standards and training are important to determine, although easily understood attributes such as sweetness or bitterness or firmness can be assessed with minimum penalist training. These instruments need calibration. Trained panel members should undergo regular sensory exercise screening and screening. In order to rate the level of sweetness of a product, panelists could be given references of sweet solutions. That's just an example. They can be given these solutions, the ones that are 2% sweet, 5%, and 15%, that correspond to the values on a scale that is 2, 6, and 5, 6 and 9 respectively. So when using a panel, the panelists should verify the rankings for all reference materials by adjusting their positions on the hedonic scale if there is disagreement. All panelists might agree and determine that the 5% is really not as sweet as the 5% solution as the references for the scale value of 5. So before moving the reference point, all participants panelists should agree and rate the unknown samples using the same reference value. Yeah. And then examples of these descriptive values, one is we have the flavor profile method. Here, trained panelists can be used to determine the profiles of products and the intensity of attributes. Prior to beginning the assessment of the products, panelists are trained on reference foods and their traits on a relevant scale. Then six screen panelists carefully study the product and discuss its attributes in an open session. When the panelists come to an agreement about the descriptive traits of the product, the results are shared in the form of a report. The flavor profiling, and they discuss and agree that all the characteristics they're looking for are the same on the or lie on the same number on the scale. And then the texture profile method. After the flavor profile method was developed, the General Food Company developed the texture profile method. This method defined specific reference materials and scales that could be used for all tests. Terms that describe textural characteristics were defined and categorized in order to produce universally uniform descriptions. Texture profiling is completed in a similar way to flavor compiling method using reference materials for textural attributes of a food such as hardness, viscosity, and adhesiveness. Yeah, you have some reference materials, you have your products, and then you test. You test for their textures while looking at the reference given. And then the next is the quantitative descriptive analysis, which is still an example of this descriptive test. This is a descriptive analysis technique that uses a panel of 10 to 15 to 12 highly trained participants to characterize and compare products. Participants are trained on a certain product and agree upon references prior to testing. Each panelist individually rates products on a line scale, and then all individual scores are compiled on a chart. Then graphical representations are made. The next is effective test. Effective test assesses the personal response by potential consumers to a product, the product's idea, or specific product attributes. Consumers are used for this test. Effective test of acceptability and preference measures subjective attitudes about products. All participants should be screened for product usage prior to participation in a study. Yeah. And this effectiveness, of course, it measures the one acceptability, how much they prefer or like the products. So before you use this product, you need to consider consumers who are using actually this product. And then sensory scientists should consider the following criteria prior to beginning an effective test. One is you need to consider objective of the research. You need to consider the test to be executed. And then you need to consider the criteria for consumers' participation. And you need to consider essential outcomes of the tests. The next is the quantitative affective test. Popular examples of quantitative acceptability tests are the hedonic scale test and paired preference test. Preferences and acceptability in consumer tests have an obvious connection if significantly more consumers rate product A higher in preference than product B. Then product A will be more acceptable products. Yeah, these quantitative affective tests are like example of it are the hedonic scale that we're going to look at, and the paired preferences test. Consumers will just have to rate likeness. If you like this product more, and then that means the product is one will be more successful than the other. An example of this quantitative affective test we said earlier on is we have one is paired preference test. Here, participants are asked to choose one of a sample over another. Samples are offered simultaneously and asked which is preferred. Multiple samples should be randomized and given unique three-digit codes. The paired preference test is easy for participants to understand, but information about where a consumer may not like sample is not apparent. So similar testing can also be completed with proper randomization on more than two samples. This testing is called multiple pair preference test. Yeah, in this pair test, of course, you give your samples and then you also ask the consumers which one they like more. Yeah. And then the hedonic tests are a scale method for measuring the level of liking for goods. Samples are presented in session and the subject is asked to indicate how much he or she likes or dislikes on a scale. So the traditional scale that is answered with 9 categories. Yeah, example of this hedonic scale is here. You're given sample and then you will need to just rate how much you like that product on the scale. One is when you dislike that product extremely. Then 9 is when you like the product extremely. It goes in that order. You're just going to put how much you like the product on the scale. And then next is the ranking tests. For three or more samples, a relative order of preferences can be determined. Neither this test nor the paired preferences test indicates whether any of the products are liked or disliked. So this test indicates the order in which they are preferred. Here you don't talk about the likingness, how much you like it or not, like in the hedonic scale. But here you're going to talk about the preferences, how much you prefer it. Maybe you prefer this is more than the other one. And then qualitative affective tests. And then those ones are examples of the quantitative affective tests. And then examples of the we're going to look at a qualitative affective test. A qualitative affective consumers tests aim to collect information from consumers regarding their acceptability of products or product concepts. Qualitative affective tests are used to gather data directly from consumers. A sensory department may conduct focus groups or consumer interviews as a solo exercise or following quantitative affective tests. Yeah. The examples of these qualitative affective sets are one, you can use the focus groups. A group of 6 to 12 of pre-screened consumers that fit into a certain target audience can be used to conduct a focus group. Our research and development departments may utilize focus groups to gather information about the acceptance of product concepts. Developers can establish sensory attributes that fit with consumer perception of an idea. Another use is to gather information about a product prototype that the participants use in their home prior to the focus group meeting. Yeah, in this focus group, of course, you have a group of people that use the product, and then you discuss about these products. You ask their ideas, what they have, like their ideas or their perception towards a particular one product. And still a continuation of this focus group. And then the next is interviews. The next example is you can use interviews. Companies can conduct interviews with targeted consumers about how they use a product or what they think about a product. These interviews are sometimes conducted after other sensory testing to gather more detailed information about the products. Yeah, you can have this interview, of course, after having other sensory testing, just gather information or detailed information about the product's accessibility. Oh, that's done about sensory. That is all about sensory evaluation. And the next is we're going to look at quality control. Quality control consists of actions taken by food processors to adequately monitor the food product, providing a product that is safe, compatible with the market, and accepted by consumers. Quality assurance is the control, evaluation, and auditing of the whole food processing system. Quality control is critical when launching a new food product because it establishes product reputation, increases efficiency, ensures product safety, and provides evidence of food regulation. I am, you know very well, as we producing these products, we need to look at the quality of the products we're going to make. And then there are a lot of things we need to consider. One is need to are the steps at which you can actually control or determine the quality of this product. You can control the quality of your products. One is at the stage of getting your raw materials. Make sure you get materials that are not bad and all that. And then you can also improve the quality of your product at the processing line when you're processing the substance, the products. You need to consider a lot of things. Maybe not using too much chemicals, not overheating and all that. And then you can also consider the quality of the products, control the quality of your products at the inspection of the finished product. When you're finished producing the products, of course, there are some that might be overburnt or some that might be underprepared and all that. There you can try to pick them off before getting them, instead of taking them into the market. And then the importance of quality control. The failure to meet quality standards in food products is not well accepted by consumers and therefore important in the food industry. Consumers expect consistency in the product they purchase. Product and company reputations are upheld. Okay, they help to uphold the reputation of the organizations or companies. And then quality control systems, they help manufacturers maintain the product control, sensory properties, they reduce production costs, they eliminate defects and increase productivity. Even when products meet company specifications, slight differences between batches are possible as variability of ingredients and processing is inevitable. So successful quality systems ensure product safety by eliminating cases of food poisoning and related risks. And then farm can reduce the chances of recalls through strict maintenance of quality control measures. They reduce chances of recalls of foods, sending off your products and getting new ones or starting the whole process again. And then quality control also increases process efficiency with the use of information provided through analysis and quality control labs. Yeah, that's still about importance of quality control. And then quality control during the development stage. The first step in quality control is finding out what attributes are acceptable to a consumer and what is unacceptable. Consumers sometimes base their likes and dislikes on popular cultures, making them hard to follow at times. So a list of product requirements is made from these attributes and interested parties look at how they can measure these attributes during the production processes. Yeah, like controlling quality, controlling the quality of the product, the developmental stage, you need to consider the consumers one. Tests. You need to consider their acceptability, their tests regarding the product. And then quality control activities can use sensory analysis and instrumental analysis or more simple visual analysis to determine acceptability. Consumer preferences should be determined through consumer product liking tests, in-home use tests, or focus groups. The quality control specifications that should be addressed during food product development include you need to look at the physical and sensory properties of the food. You need to look at the product function and nutritive value of the food. You need to look at the process equipment and process rates. You need to look at packaging and packaging equipment. You need to look at the composition of the products. You need to look at the microbial limitations of the product. You need to look at the shelf life of the products. You need to look at labeling and coding of the products. And then you need to look at the regulatory requirements of the product. These are some of the qualities you need to consider during one um, development of a product. And then the process of developing quality criteria. This is the criteria or process you need to take as you're planning to develop a quality product. One is to determine desired quality characteristics. You need to know the characteristics of the or desired characteristics of the consumers, what they need in their products. And then you need to write standards for end products. You need to know, like maybe you've gotten the characteristics or qualities the consumers need. You need to write down the end product, how they wish the end product to be. And then you need to develop process controls. You need to develop process controls as you're manufacturing these products. You need to develop how you can control maybe overheating, how you can control all those damages that will change the quality of the product. And then you need to run tests in pilot plants. Yeah, as you've made maybe small samples and all that, you run your tests. Yeah, you try to give it out like to your beneficial to the target audience and know and get the feedback from them whether this is what they want. And then you need to look at full production. And then after you've done that, you now do what? You can now fully produce the product. And then physical and chemical quality factors for testing methods. There are physical factors that you need to consider before you choose a quality testing method. And you need to, and they have different. Let's say there are different methods for testing the different one chemical or physical properties of a product. Okay. The physical factors you need to consider are the color. How do you test the color? Different methods for testing color is there. Different methods for testing viscosity, and the different methods for testing the texture. Different methods for testing container, for testing symmetry, for testing defects. Yeah. And then the chemical factors, the different methods you use to test the chemical factors of the products, the moisture level, the fat oil, the protein, carbohydrate, and ash. These are all under quality control. You don't want to have excess of this on your products or less of this on the product. So there are different methods you can use to test whether they are the colors you need, then the viscosity or the state you need, then the texture or whatever you need. Other methods for testing quality control, we have four methods. We have the physical method, we have the chemical method, sensory and microbial testing. Under the physical, here you look at the weight, the volumes, dimension of the products. And then from other chemicals, quality control is a priority in the chemical industry. Ensure that products are made according to the right formulas and that finished goods can be rated in appropriate potency. Yeah, under the chemicals, you ensure that the right formulas are used in making the products and ensuring they are in their appropriate potency. And then under the sensory, of course, we looked at the sensory evaluation first. You're going to ensure that the products have the right smell that is needed, the right taste. They look appealing, of course, and then the right hearing and all that. And then under microbial testing, of course, you're going to look at the bioburden. You're going to look at the microbial identifications. You're going to look at just like those bacteria or let's say fungal microorganisms load in your one in your products, not to be excess because like products like yogurts, we have some good microbials that are needed, so you need to consider all this when you're testing the quality of the product. And then controlling quality during production. The bulk of quality control efforts takes place in the production facility to ensure that products meet consumer standards. Sampling plants should be established. Processors for testing quality control should be written plans that are easily understood. Unwritten plans lead to confusion and misunderstanding. Yeah, so as you're trying to control the quality of your products during the production stage, you need to have plans, written plans on objectives and all that. Yeah, and then control process takes inspection of raw materials. Yeah, during this control, you're going to look at, of course, we said earlier on, the raw materials during the processing and even checking the finished products. So you're going to look at the raw materials. You're going to look at the verification of the process. Are they using the right process? Are they not jumping in process during the production of that sub products? And then you're going to look at calibration of test equipment and processing instruments. And then finally, documentation. Make sure you use the right instructions regarding the production of that product. We've come to the end of our session. Thank you so much. In case there are any students that have been following with me, is there any question? If there are no questions, that is the end of our session. Thank you so much. See you in the next lecture.